Greetings, I am Herbert Erpaderp, and today I'm going to build this Panzer 38T Ausführung B from first to fight. This is a 72nd scale wargaming kit intended for the game Rezhizhen 1939, though you could use it for any game you wanted really, or, if you prefer, as a display piece. The back of the box is about what I would expect from one of these kits. There's a basic painting and marking guide, some information about the tank in Polish, German and English, and some instructions. I did have a couple of complaints about these instructions, but nowhere near as many as with the previous First to Fight kit that I built. Anyway, these instructions are mostly adequate, they're just not perfect. There is also a set of instructions on the First to Fight website. They are the same diagrams, but they are a bit clearer and you can obviously zoom in on the digital one, which can be rather helpful. Inside the box, there's quite a few sprues. More than I expected anyway. I suspect this is because First to Fight also offer at least one other Panzer 38T, the Ausführung A, I believe, and probably a Hetzer as well. The sprues do look quite nice and neat, and from my initial observations, there don't seem to be too many extra thin parts for me to break here. I feel like the detailing is pretty good. There's a lot of nice rivet detail, and that's always fun when it comes time for painting. It's not over-exaggerated like is often the case with a gaming-oriented model, but it is certainly there. Probably the worst mold line in the kit is along the treads of the track sets. Those aren't especially detailed to begin with, so it's not like you're going to ruin anything if you just roughly scrape those lines off, and if the lack of detail upsets you, you can always cover them in mud. They do look rather nice from the sides at least. Something I quite like about this kit is that the main gun has been slide molded. You don't often see that on a gun this small, so it's kind of nice. There's a couple of small sprues with only one part on them, or just a couple of parts, and I guess the reason for this is that it's probably just cheaper to do many sprues rather than one sprue with various different bits in it, like the lower front plate, the front of the turret, and the stowage box. All of these parts are neat and tidy, and in my opinion, they look rather good. When I chose this kit for my stream, I thought, you know what, I'll avoid photo etch by building this. But no, there's a little fret of photo etch here. I couldn't actually figure out what the four platey looking things are, but the thing with all of the holes in it is a stowage box. A little sheet of decals is also included, and this has more marking choices than most First to Fight kits I've seen so far, though it's still not a lot. But then, how many decal choices do you really need? You can always source aftermarket decals if you need something specific. And of course, there's a magazine. In this case, issue number 86. As usual, this is in Polish, which continues to be a language I don't understand, but I still think it's a cool feature. There's some painting information, a clearer version of the instructions from the back of the box, and pictures which could be useful for modelling references, none of which requires an understanding of any language. Okay, that's what's in the box, let's get to gluing some bits of plastic together. I start with the turret because, well, it's the first thing in the instructions. I glue the main gun into the back of the turret front, and there's some small indentations for it to sit in. This should be installed with the little nub thing on top. I think that's the recuperator. Whatever it is, it should be on top. Then I glue the turret bottom into the turret top. There's a couple of bar things in the opening at the front, and I'm fairly sure those are meant to hold the gun in place if you choose not to glue it. Why not follow that by installing the turret front with the gun? It fits pretty well, though I did find I had to apply some pressure to deal with minor gaps. The front of the turret has a machine gun, so I install that. I'm not quite sure if this is coaxial or not with the main gun, but I've angled mine similar to the main gun anyway, because why not? The commander's hatch then goes into place here, and unless you're putting it around the wrong way or upside down or something, this will pretty much just drop right into place. Just in front of that, I add I think it's a periscope for the gunner, or maybe it's just a random doodad. Whatever it is, it goes here, and getting it to sit vertically did require a little bit of nudging. Then, on the left side of the turret, around here, I add this handrail. There's no mounting holes for this, so you've just got to kind of guess at its position, though you can use the painting guide to take away some of that guesswork. It also looks a little bit messy because I didn't want to clean up the sprue remnants because the part is so small, and you can easily trim those back once the part's been glued into place anyway. And that is the turret done. Now, we start the hull off with some tracks. into which we need to add the inner half of the drive sprocket and idler wheel. This is pretty simple. Just make sure that you are using the correct part, particularly for the drive sprocket, so the teeth line up properly. Though, in fairness, it will be kind of hard to see if the teeth line up or not when the model is completed. Attaching those track sets to the hull is a fairly logical next step, so that's what I did. There's plenty of contact points where you can place a good amount of glue to show your respect to the glue god. The fit is pretty good, though there is enough play in the parts that you could potentially get the tracks sitting at a bit of an angle, so pay attention to that. I did consider installing the whole rear at this point, but I decided it might make a bit more sense to add it after the upper hull part, which is what I did next. There's a couple of internal guide pins which help ensure that everything is lined up nice and neat. Then, why not install the aforementioned hull rear part? The fit isn't too bad, though I did have to apply some gap eliminating pressure, mostly on the right hand side. Nothing too dramatic though. The lower front plate comes next, and at first I was a little bit confused. I tried to press the part on from the front, but it should really be kind of dropped in from above. There's a couple of slots for it in the final drive casing area. It took a bit of kajiggering and some pressure, but I eventually got that into place as well. Now, how about a spot of hull detailing? On the tank's rear, I add this towing hook. This seems like a much more practical location for it than on the side of the hull, or the turret. Above that, the exhaust pipe, which is also a fairly simple installation, though the only keyed mounting point for this is where the pipe contacts the hull. You've just got to eyeball the little mounting bracket bits. The instructions do also show a shovel that should be mounted on the hull rear, but unless I'm missing something, there was no shovel on any of the sprues. So we've just got to come up with a story about how Hans has misplaced the shovel again, or maybe he's taken it home to use in his sauerkraut vats. Moving on, it's time to add the sides of the fighting compartment. This isn't difficult at all, and the parts just plop right into place, though you may want to apply just a tiny bit of pressure to them, just to be sure. The front plate part goes on in the same way, and you'll note that this part has a sort of bulge in it at the front, where the machine gun will be. Not all Panzer 38Ts have this. On some variants the front plate is flat. I was initially a little bit concerned that the fighting compartment roof might not fit too well, but I was worried about nothing, and it actually fits very well. Let's add this machine gun mounting to the front of the hull, like so, though do make sure it's up the right way. If you think about it, it would make sense to install a machine gun into that mount.
Oh yeah, it really does make sense when you put it that way.
Installing this gun is just as easy as the one on the front of the turret was, which is to say very, very easy. A no-tech convoy light goes here on the tank's left. There's no mounting hole for this, or if there was, it's covered by that bracing thing there. I just glued the light on against that bracing, nudged it to make it nice and neat looking, and that seems to have done the trick. There's an axe on the hull's right, and we've got to cover that with this box. Some axes are just quite obscene, and they need to be hidden, lest the tank's parents find it and take it away. It does seem a bit weird that the box should go here, but that's what the instructions want, and who am I to disagree? On the side of the hull, just forward of that box, I add this thing, which I believe is an antenna mount. Behind that box, I add this nice long bar. There's no guides or keying for this, but it's not too difficult to eyeball. I used the painting guide as a reference again for this. Now for some small details. On the right, this thing, which I'm pretty sure is a smoke candle holder. There's no mounting hole for this either, but there are some nubs, one on each side of the whole rear, and I'm pretty sure this part is meant to sit on or against those nubs. The instructions aren't super clear here, which is kind of annoying. On the left side I add this, I think it's a light. The same things I said about the smoke candle thing can be said about this. No guide hole, only nub. Next, time for that photo etch. Oh boy! In this case it's not too bad at all. The stowage box has guides etched into it, so it's really simple to bend into the correct shape. At first I thought this was just a replacement for the plastic box part, but then I realised you were supposed to glue the plastic part inside of it, obviously with superglue, because plastic cement will just not melt brass. Having a plastic centre means that this part can be glued onto the hull with plastic cement, which is much better than superglue. It'll probably stay on if the part gets bumped. On top of that, a jack. If it weren't for the plastic central part, this jack would just be hovering over an empty space, and that would be kind of weird. I nudged the parts into place, and they look pretty good. The photo etch stowage box really adds to the model. There are still these little flappy things. I've no idea what they are, and the instructions weren't at all helpful in figuring out where they go, so I just left them off. I'm sure that'll upset somebody, but I just don't care. I did briefly look at some real tanks to try and figure it out, but I didn't find anything helpful. Oh well, the model is now complete, so it's time to use that locking tab mechanism to secure the turret in place. We've not seen a good locking tab mechanism for a couple of months, so I'm sure this'll be pleasing to many of you. Anyway, that's the plastic 72nd scale Panzer 38T Ausführung B from First to Fight completed, and a rather nice little tank it is. I've got to admit, I had a lot more fun putting this together than the previous First to Fight kit I built, and you'll notice that not one single part ended up breaking. Though, to be fair, there weren't really any thin breakable parts in this kit either. The detailing is quite nice. I'm not a Panzer 38T-ologist, so I couldn't tell you if this kit is highly historically accurate or not, and it is a wargaming kit in a relatively small scale, so it's likely some detail has been omitted. It still looks good though. It'll look great on the gaming table, and it'll work perfectly fine as a display piece too, unless you happen to be looking for something super detailed. But if you are, you're probably not going to be looking for cheaper kits like this one. And these kits are cheap, about $20-ish Australian, and I think they're really good value for money. They're also, usually, really good fun builds. I do appreciate the photo etch box on this model, and I think that'll stand out quite a bit when it gets painted, though I won't be painting this for a while. If you're looking to game in 72nd scale, and you're looking for a few Panzer 38Ts, you could certainly do worse than picking up a few of these. If you don't want Panzer 38Ts, I don't know what to tell you. Probably just buy the kind of tank you want instead. I might be waffling, so if you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the comment section below. If you'd like to watch me build kits like this one live on stream, head on over to my Twitch channel. The link is in the description below. And if you've not already done so, why not subscribe here on YouTube for the low price of absolutely nothing? Or if you've got the means, and you want to help a Herbert Erpaderp do Herbert Erpaderp things, as well as see my videos a bit early before there's any ads, consider becoming a patron. You can find links to Patreon, and all of my other things like Discord and social media in the description below. And, as always, I shall return soon. So until then, be excellent to each other, have a wonderful day, and thanks for watching. Farewell.